I wonder who's gonna win, this main character or this irrelevant side character. Tournament arcs are overhyped most of the time, and here's why. You literally know what's gonna happen most of the time. Let's think about why tournament arcs are interesting in the first place. In real life, we have huge sporting events like the World Cup. And it doesn't matter who you are, everyone's at least a little invested. Because it's amazing, a soccer team from every country around the world is competing to make it to the next round and ultimately win the entire tournament. There are some teams that are lethal competitors every single year and some that are underdogs that people root for. It's exhilarating because you never know who's going to win. Now let's apply this to fictional stories where this just isn't true. Of course, the tournament is going to take place through the perspective of the main character, so it's really no surprise when they beat everyone. Combine this with the fact that tournament arcs usually just have less stakes than others because it's just a friendly competition. So how do you make a tournament arc interesting when the stakes are low and the outcome is predictable? Well, I picked 3 examples of how you can make a tournament arc stand out. The first of them being Black Clover's Royal Knight exam arc. I know nobody really expected this, but I have a very specific reason for why I love this arc so much. This arc is used to establish new characters and help us understand the families in Black Clover better. My biggest frustration when watching something is when they introduce characters that aren't very important in the future and won't show up later. Especially when it's in a tournament arc because you know they're gonna lose, so what's even the point? This is even worse when the tournament takes place in the beginning of the story when you don't even care about the main characters, much less the minor ones. Now let's see what Black Clover did to combat all of these weak points I just stated. First of all, we know all the new characters being introduced are going to be important because they're literally going to be fighting the Midnight Sun in the very next arc. Second of all, there have already been several arcs since the very beginning of the story, meaning we already have enough of a connection with the main characters to have room to care for the side characters. The new characters that are introduced are all related to the main characters in one way or another, which actually does enhance the story and make it more interesting. Instead of having random opponents who never show up after, we get more personal fights, especially since family is such a huge theme in Black Clover. And it's because magic capacity is genetically passed down, so noble and royal families have much more. Family is usually the center of the character's issues that they need to overcome. Like in the Black Bulls, Noelle is a royal who is hated by her siblings and shunned by them. Vanessa's mother is the witch queen who she ran away from for imprisoning her. Finral is a noble who is shunned by his family for not being strong enough. The list goes on and on of people who weren't accepted by their families, and this ties in with the whole theme of found family and creating a new family with people who actually care about you. And the Black Bull is a place for outcasts who accepts anyone to join their family. This is really important when you think about an arc's significance, because in this very arc we get to see the family dynamics take place in the tournament. Noelle finally gets to show her siblings her worth and gives them a very satisfying defeat. Langris almost kills Finral, making the Black Bulls have to come and stop him, which is probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. And on top of all the theme and character building, it's just genuinely such a fun tournament to watch. And that's because the rules are set up so that the characters are all split into different teams, and the goal being to break the other team's crystal, which I find way more interesting than just normal 1-versus-1 fights. They have to strategize with someone playing defense and maybe someone on the offense trying to break the other person's crystal. And Yuno vs. Royal is probably one of the best Black Clover fights of all time. It was the perfect time to give Yuno an upgrade because he was going to use it in the next arc. Spirit Dive is just one of the coolest things they show, and I just felt like I had to show it off. But the Royal Knights arc really knew how to have fun while still giving us really interesting character dynamics. The Dark Tournament arc from Yu Yu Hakusho is often thought of as the best tournament arc, and for good reason. Alongside Dragon Ball, they really popularized the format of tournament arcs, which is that 1v1 gauntlet style. You could easily put Dragon Ball's early tournament arc here, but I just personally think the Dark Tournament edges it out just barely. Earlier I said tournament arcs are just friendly competitions, so the stakes feel very low, and the Dark Tournament could not be any further from low stakes. Yusuke and his team are in the midst of demons, and the only way for them to survive is to win. That means each fight is a fight to the death, and it actually feels like it. When someone gets injured, they actually have to sit out and rest, meaning the team has to properly manage their fighters. It makes each fight they go through more intense because you know they need to save their energy for later because there are going to be a lot more fights to come. One thing I should mention is that I pointed out earlier that I don't like it in tournaments when they introduce a lot of minor characters. And I still stick by that. I mean, the Dark Tournament introduced a lot of minor side antagonists, and I didn't really like it because I was mainly just waiting for the finale. The Toguro brothers had been built up to be these unimaginably strong fighters, especially the younger Toguro brother, who was already leagues stronger than all of them while using a small percentage of his power. While the beginning fights weren't nearly as interesting as the finale, I still feel they were important in slowly building up each character's development as the fights went on. Maybe not too much through narrative, but more so through their actions and the physical reflection of that. But let's talk the final fight with Team Toguro. Each fight brought the characters to their maximum potential, which is when I feel like I really started liking the characters. Hiei's fight showcased his immense power, as he managed to not lose a single fight in the entire tournament. When Bui asked Hiei not to kill him, he refuses because he says he doesn't listen to others, but I also feel like this is a sign that he's becoming less ruthless and becoming more human-like despite being a demon. Kuwabara versus the elder Toguro brother also really fits in with Kuwabara's character as a whole. He might not be the strongest character of the group, but he has such a strong fighting spirit and never gives up. He gets beat down by the elder Toguro brother, and yeah, he usually takes a lot of damage from the enemy before he manages to figure something out at the end, and this time he turns a sword into a net to combat his regeneration ability. Kurama versus Karasu is probably my favorite fight of the entire series. Kurama by far has the coolest development because he literally physically transforms into the Fox Demon, and obviously the final fight, which had been hyped up so much for so many chapters, Yusuke versus the younger Toguro brother. Toguro had just killed Yusuke's mentor Genkai in an unofficial battle outside the tournament. All of this stacked on to make the fight so much more emotional. As the final battle of the tournament, I think it played out perfectly. They both went back and forth, getting good hits in and craving that victory. And the fact that Yusuke pulled through and secured the victory in a believable way made the whole tournament feel so much more satisfying. So the Chunin exams is actually a bunch of arcs put into one and not just one tournament. I'm going to be talking specifically about the preliminaries and the finale. Now this seems kind of funny, me putting in the Chunin exams after it literally violates like everything I said was bad about tournament arcs, because it introduces way too many pointless characters and the fights are really predictable. But I think it really makes up for it by introducing really unique aspects not really seen in other series. See, OG Naruto put a lot more care into the characters' development and themes. You have characters like Neji philosophizing about destiny and fate at the age of 13. But of course, everyone knows what I'm going to be talking about: Rock Lee versus Gaara. The battle between talent and hard work. The fight had so many details that made it brilliant, but I'll just boil it down to why the fight made the tournament arc so much better. With Gaara being presented as kind of the main villain of the Chunin exam arc, and Rock Lee being presented as this comic relief side character, we were all expecting a full beatdown with Gaara just destroying Rock Lee. But we didn't know Rock Lee was gonna pop off like that, flexing his weights and unlocking the gates. I mean, it was certainly unexpected for Rock Lee to have pretty much the upper hand the entire fight, and pretty much like Gaara being this ultimate defense while Rock Lee being the ultimate offense was this perfect mirror image of each other. Like Rock Lee pretty much had no defense and he actually injured himself while attacking. Meanwhile, Gaara had no ability to fight, he just purely relied on his defensive powers and his ranged attacks. Theoretically, it could have gone either way, and I actually think it leans more towards Rock Lee's favor, but Gaara was the main antagonist of the arc, and it just made more sense for the story for Gaara to move on. Moving on to the final fights, they were actually very creative. Most of the fights required a lot of tactical thinking and strategy, and it made the fights feel much more than just action. My main reason for putting the Chunin exams here is the hectic ending, but I really just like the fact that the tournament had a twist ending where there really was no winner. Most tournaments end in the same way, which is usually one of the main characters winning, which, you know, it works. I just think Naruto did something really special with this arc, because it really built up this momentum where you had something to look forward to other than just the 1v1 fights. Because we kind of got to see the Sand Trio just discussing their plans amongst themselves, and we still didn't really know Gaara's whole deal yet. So we knew something was going on, we just didn't know what was going to happen yet. And of course, Orochimaru had been plotting pretty much the whole Chunin exams, so to see it all pay off in the invasion was really, really brilliant. Because the more I think about it, if the arc had just ended in a normal way with, you know, Sasuke winning or something, Naruto really would have lost a lot of momentum that it would have built up. The impact of the ending of this tournament caused Gaara to become an ally in the future. plant the seed in Sasuke to leave the village, and the death of Hiruzen making them need to look for a new Hokage. And everything I just said were the literal next arcs of the series. So it's just something I find to be very underlooked. Like, the ending of an arc could really be the most important part of the arc because it sets up everything else after. So there are several different angles you can take to make a tournament arc stand out. Like the Royal Knight exam, you can use it to introduce new characters directly related to the characters we already care for. You can make it like the Dark Tournament arc and ramp up the stakes by making each fight feel more threatening and give little room for recovery. And you can make it like the Chunin exams, which has a surprising twist ending that gives the rest of the story the momentum it needs. If you have ideas for your story and want to turn them into reality, I've created a community that has a full step-by-step guide on how to do that. And you'll be getting my personal feedback every single day alongside all the other talented creative writers. If you're even just interested, click that first link in the description.